Okay, so let's actually continue building out your P0, your Project Zero, but let's also add a favicon. So if you've never heard the term, a favicon, and I'm going to bring up my skeleton page, is actually the icon. You've seen them, but you may not know what they're referring to as these icons that are branding for, of course, many of us, most of us use multiple tabs in our browser, and so this just gives a way to quickly see, oh, I know that's Canvas. Oh, okay, I know this is YouTube. So it's just a nice way, and it's just part of building out a site. Okay. So in this case, what I'm going to have you do now, you could use AI for this as well if you wanted. I find this site to be really good. Matter of fact, I just walked through it myself to see how it worked. And so you can actually pick an image, right? So you could actually, if you have something locally that you wanted to use, you could try that. This is where you have to be a little bit careful because the more busy an image is, right? If you were going to take that image and try to create it as a favicon, because see how small that would be. So you also want to make things are clear. Now, what I ended up doing was I just went through and created a logo, right? And why did I do that? Well, first I could give it my color palette, kind of what matched my site in a way. So I was like, okay, you know what? I have a little darker color, so I'd want to spend a little time looking through here. Oh, you know what? That's pretty good. And then what I could do is even put text in here. Like I could even put Rio in here. Okay, now you could see, well, would that show up, right? Maybe I could just put something like that. So you could play with this, right? You could play with what this looks like. And you definitely want to. Now, this is, you don't have to use the logo on your site, but on the way to actually, after you've created the logo, then you generate the favicon, which is fairly common that the logo and the favicon would be the same. And this is where, no, on my skeleton page, the name is being used. You may have something you want to play with. It's really up to you, right? So then I would go ahead and say create the favicon. I'd ask a few more questions about how I'd want to show it up. Is it light? Is it dark? Right? And this generally is just how it would respond to whatever the user has set up, right? And then here's how it would look on the iOS, because you'll see in a minute, and I noticed this already in my template, that they actually had several favicons already set up, right? And then also Web App Manifesta, and this is where if you've ever installed an app and you see it on your local system, that's what it looks like. And then you can just go down to the end and say next at this point if you wanted, okay? Now, at this point, you get some content to actually copy onto the head section. Now, you're going to end up needing to modify each page for this to show up, okay? And as well, you get a download. Now, I already downloaded it just to see what it looked like, so I'll show you that in a second, and then I'll modify my skeleton just to make sure it works, because the thing you want to look at is how it's referencing the images. Okay, it looks like it's going image folder, IMG, image folder, okay, SVG, which is a scaled vector font. And actually, that is the favicon. Looks like it's setting just in the root, okay, of my system. So these are looking in the image folder. So we can modify these. You can do this however you want. The less of course you modify, the easier it can become. So what I would first do is I would take this content and I would copy it and I'd go over to my VS Code and I would look at my end, or actually I'd look at my skeleton, because that's actually kind of, you can play around with your skeleton before you do anything. Now, in this case, I noticed that my template already had some favicons, but again, it's not the favicon I want. It's just the one that came with it. I want to brand my own site. So the first thing I'd probably do on my skeleton is just get rid of those. Oh, actually, before I do that, I'd actually want to look at where those favicons are being stored for your particular site. So mine are in the assets folder. Okay, yeah, I had an assets folder. I have an image folder within there, and then I see that these are just loaded here. Okay, so I could use this structure if I wanted. Then I would then move them into here, right? Because I wouldn't want to use the ones that are already here. Let's see, that's that. Okay, so I don't want to get rid of that one. Services are there. So these are specific to the portfolio and the testimony. That's the one for, so again, I'm doing this for mine. You'll have to figure out what this looks like for yours, okay? Because they're all going to be different, okay? So then so now that I've looked at this, and again, maybe you covered this as part of your template, but what I would probably do is control / just to comment those out. And then I would come in, I don't know if you remember, I pasted all that in, and then I would have to see how I'd want to modify this. Now I'm just tabbing these over. I could actually just use the tool to do it, probably a better way to format. But now I'd want to look at, okay, it's going to be, oh, actually that's type. That's not folder. I just saw that. So now it's going to look for it here. So then I would either want to modify where they're at or where it was looking like I already had it. So I could come here and modify these. That's one way I could do it. And I'd have to know if it was actually the right size. Okay, so there's definitely a little few steps that you're going to do here. So I'm going to actually open it up because I already have this downloaded and I see that I got, okay, so I did get that same size, right? So I have a couple of sizes. I have the manifesto site. So I have a couple more than what it started with here, right? So what I'd want to do is first take all of these, copy it here, right? And then come into my images and paste them. And what I'm going to, are you sure you want to, yeah, I do. Now, what will happen though is if I do it this way, okay, good. So then I can see which ones, oh, and see what happened. Oh, very cool. Good to know this, right? When I copy them over, right? First, I can see that it already had an Apple icon, which I could see here. So I could either get rid of this one, which I probably would do. I'd probably get rid of this one. So again, you can do a little file management to make sure, and I would rename this one. So this is the kind of work I'm going to pause real quick just to do. So, but I think you get the idea, right? How you want to use these first. And again, you can copy them wherever. Typically, it'd be in an images directory. Although I noticed you could also put at least the favicon in the root. But let me actually go ahead and finish this cleanup here, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I got mine done. And so one thing it's good to think about as I was doing this, because where I had these before, if I remember when I first pasted them in, right, from the site, when I was over here, right? And it was showing that it was going to look for them. I mistook that for the file. It's actually the reference. So this is going to say /, so it's going to look in the root. And this is why it's important to understand where you're putting it. Way important. And in this case, notice for mine, again, you'll just have to consider this for yours. I had an asset folder that had images. So then I updated each one of them. So I got some new ones. I got rid of ones that were duplicated, right? I got rid of those. I got my Apple one. It's been modified. That's right, because I deleted the other one. Then I just made sure all of these. Oh yeah, actually that one's fine. Reference Apple Touch. Actually, that one I'm looking at. And this is where I don't have an Apple on me, but I could simulate that in Web Developer, the Dev Tools. I could do that as well. I noticed this was the one I actually didn't do. So one thing, okay, so I could dive deep here, but I'm just giving you the idea. I went through and modified this. This is probably the only one I'm probably I missed because of my structure of my template. So you're just going to have to, play with this for your own template and figure it out. So I actually probably will end up copying this here. There we go. Okay, so that way I'm consistent because it is setting in that. It's not setting in the root. Now, by the way, I have P0 open. I should have said that earlier. But now what I want to do is go to the site, which is here, and see if that logo showed up, and it sure did. Now, I think this would work, but it'd be kind of fun to see. You can right click, hit inspect, Over here, you can actually tell it if you've ever noticed this little icon. Let's see if I don't think it'll do it, but I think it might be fun to see iPhone. Oh yeah, see, it's not actually it's not rendering it to show me if that icon showed up. What it is DevTools gives you a way to see it emulates these devices. And so I just don't see that it's giving me that, but it is showing me what it looks like, which is kind of cool. Right. So as long as, for our standard browsers, if you happen to have, I don't have an iPhone, you could check it on an iPhone as well. But mostly what you want to do is just make sure yours is coming through. And the most important one is actually this Favicon. And what these other ones are is based on these other ways that somebody may be looking at your site. You would want to make sure, I was trying to remember if it's the 9696 one as the default or this one. I think it depends on the browser and how it's set up. So what you want to do is modify all those things to be custom for your environment. Again, I put mine in, I went ahead and kept the structure that was in there. I didn't place them in the root. I did see it showed up here. And then what you'd want to do is when you push them to GitHub, you want to make sure they show up there. And again, remember there's a little bit of a delay. Okay. So now here's where I played with my skeleton, made sure they show up there, and that way when I copy them into, and you might say, well, Rio, why didn't we do this one before we built out the pages? Well, this is kind of the reality. And so this gives you another time because I want you to continue building out your pages, right? For this one. So you only have one commit you need to do here. Give us your live URL. Why did you choose this, right? And so does it remain clear and recognizable? And actually, we didn't do a 16 by 16. The biggest one, 16 by 180 by 180. I don't see a 16 by 16, so I'll take that one off the instruction. But list the specific pages and content, right? So because there's two parts of this assignment. First, create that favicon, get it working, right? And then, check your to-do list. How are you doing here, right? Tell us updates you've done because you just want to be continuing to work on that project 0 because this is the week 8. We only have one more, as I talked about in attendance. Okay, reach out if you need help on this one.